I'm Alex, and today I want to talk about rereading books. I feel like a lot of the book content on YouTube, or BookTube, as the cool kids call it, is focused around book hauls, reading new books, how many new books were read that year, and that's great. For people who only like reading new things, they don't want to go back and revisit, maybe you've got to keep up with the trends, maybe there's a bit of FOMO attached to missing out on the latest books. There is some pressure to keep on moving and not stop, not look back. And I just feel there's something missing. There's something that we lose out on as readers if we don't revisit the books that we love, if we don't revisit the books that we didn't get all we could. And we never will. We never will get all we can from a book. There's just too much changing. We're changing. We're in constant flux. And there's too much within the pages for us to get it first time. And for it to mean everything that it can. Because at the end of the day, what does a book mean? It's up to us. And it's up to our experiences. And if they're constantly changing, so is our interpretation of the book. So is what it means. And that is one of the primary reasons that I like to reread books. To apply my shifted perspective and see what I can understand on a second or third or even fourth pass. There's no limit to the amount of times that you should reread a book. It's totally dependent on your wishes or your lack of. In which case, keep on reading new books. If that's how you want to read, that's how you want to read. And no one's here to tell you otherwise. I'm certainly not. But as I change, as I grow, as I have new experiences, I can come back to a book and read it in a totally different light. Different characters will stand out to me and have a different meaning to me. The characters that I once thought were the embodiment of myself, or the ones I related to most, I'll find that I no longer do. I've moved beyond that. And it's interesting not only to see what I now attach myself to and what I now draw out of the book, but contrast that to what I used to. What were my memories of the book? And how did that vary in comparison to what I now have taken from the book in this future reading of it? I think it's a very interesting exercise or meditation just to see how have we changed, and we can grade that evolution of ourselves based on the media that we take in, based on the films that we watch, the TV shows that we watch. And another aspect of that is a transportation back to a different time, back to a better time maybe. Watching something from our childhood and having that wave of memories, the people that we used to watch it with, when we used to watch it, who used to read it to us maybe, who introduced us to this form of media that we're consuming. There is a nostalgic aspect to these mediums, and it's something that we can use to tap into our past and to take us back there. One example with that in my own life is, after a breakup and you think, oh, the world's ending, there's nothing left, there's no future. Who am I alone? Who am I when I'm single? But going back and reading books from my childhood and realising, you were fine. You existed before and you'll exist after. There is nothing but yourself that you need to survive. And as long as you can find comfort within yourself, as long as you can remind yourself how good you've been and how strong you've been, then you can do anything going forward. You just need to tap back into that. And I found that rereading books and going into my past bibliography has been a helpful way of doing that. Another reason to reread is to get a better understanding. Oftentimes I'll read a book based on a recommendation that this is a great book. And not just a recommendation from a personal friend, but universally it seems that people think this is a great book. And then I'll read it and have my doubts about all these recommendations and assume that the book isn't really that great. Part of it might be that it's been hyped up too much and then the anticipation is too great, so the actual payoff will never live up to it. If it's too overhyped, if my expectations are too high, even if it is as good as my expectations, I still won't get that satisfaction. My neurological circuits still will not connect in the same way. I won't get that chemical payoff internally. So it could be that side of things. It could be that it's just not for me. could be that I'm wrong. It could be that everyone else is wrong. It's very rarely that last one. Usually it's a mix of the first three. But there is a chance that I was wrong. I didn't take the time to appreciate it. I wasn't at the right time in my life to appreciate it. So it's an interesting idea to go back, see if you connect with the book differently, see if you can find the reasons why people enjoyed it. And oftentimes, with a big enough gap of time in between readings, you will learn to appreciate a book and see the merits that are there. Especially now, your expectations going in are rock bottom. You know you didn't like this book, so any positive aspect of it, that's going to be a win for you. The final reason is it's a guaranteed good time. If it's a book you love, there's no risk attached to it. You know you're going to enjoy it. You know it's going to be a great read, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to have that fear of buying a new book and thinking, is this going to be worth the time investment? You know it is. It's a great book. It's one of your favourite books, so you might as well reread it. I will say that I don't really reread books which have twists in them. So thinking to mystery novels, thrillers. I think it kind of detracts, part of the enjoyment of reading a thriller is the thrill. It is the twists, it is the turns of the story. And if I already know them, unless I feel that there's some deeper or more philosophical reading within the book, I'm probably not going to bother. Unless I really do love the book and I want to use it to learn a foreign language. But I'll get onto that a bit later. So getting onto the books that I reread in 2022, the first reason that I reread books is because I just think they're great and I love the stories within them. The first example of that is Le Petit Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And I just think it's a wonderfully grounding story. It strips away all the grandeur of the world and it takes you back to what is the most important. That there are things in life which we all overlook, which we take for granted, and that we should pay more attention to them. The main way that this manifests in Le Petit Prince is to do with the interpersonal relations that we have, the connections that we have to other people, and realizing that that's what makes them special. It is the time that we've given to these people that makes them so valuable, that makes them important to us. Even if we think they're 10 a penny, there are thousands of them in the world. None like that. None have been invested in the way that we've invested in them. And so it's for that reason that they remain special. And it's a lesson that I like to keep coming back to. It's a book that grounds me, that gives me pause and makes me grateful for what I have in life. Another book for a similar reason as Le Petit Prince is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. This one is a parable of a different kind that talks about not giving up. And even when the odds are against you, keep going, keep fighting. You only lose when you go up. You're only defeated when you throw in the towel. If you don't do that, if you're always willing to try again, to try new things and to keep pushing, nothing can break you. Nothing can keep you down. And that is the essence of life, in my opinion, and, well, up to a point appeared to be Hemingway's opinion as well. The book is tragic. It's a sad story, even though there is this message of hope running through it. And to me, that's fitting of life. Life is, with its tragedy, with its suffering, but it's hopeful because we can keep going. We can keep fighting, and we can always make improvements in our lives and in the lives of others. So it throws down the gauntlet and asks us, what are we going to do? What life are we going to live? And that is a reminder that I like to have again and again, and I find that The Old Man and the Sea is the best medium for me of having that reminder. The third book I reread last year that I loved was The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. It's another short story, which is one of the main things that I look for in a book that I'm going to reread. I don't have too many long books that I reread, although there are some, as you'll see from this year. But The Housekeeper and the Professor holds a special place in my heart. And that is because it was one of the first books I really connected with in Japanese literature. And since then, I've had a blossoming of my interest in Japanese literature and read a lot more books that I've really continued to enjoy. I started out with Mishima, who was fine, but I didn't really connect with, to be honest, some of the perversions in his writing. I think they were more psychologically and philosophically interesting, which can stand alone in its own right, but the repetition of the stories and the constantly autobiographical nature of all of Mishima's books is something that turned me off and had me sort of questioning early on Japanese literature, very prematurely. But The Housekeeper and the Professor, great book. Wholesome, a beautiful story, characters you can connect with, and a great message, again, of the connections that we have with other people and how we can impact the lives of others for the better, and really that we should. Great book. I remember it with all the different books of Japanese literature that I read, because this is the first one that made me fall in love with the genre. Well, not the genre, but that section of the literary world. And yeah, no regrets at all about that. The fourth book in this category is Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare. One of my favourite Shakespeare poems. I think it is such an interestingly complex play, especially with Brutus as the protagonist, and delving into the reasons that he has for murdering one of his best friends, and the idea of duty and where that lies, the seemingly noble actions and how they can be seen from lots of different perspectives. I really enjoy the writing, particularly the words of Julius Caesar early on in the play in regards to death and living. The funeral speech by Mark Antony is stuff legends. It's just brilliant writing. And for those reasons, one of my favourite Shakespeare plays. I love to constantly go back, and I think this is the best way to get a deeper understanding of Shakespeare's work. They're not long plays. They're easily reread within even a few days. And I much prefer this method of getting a deeper understanding than using a guide. I don't want to taint my impression of a book by hearing how someone else interpreted it, hearing what someone else thinks, because that's all they are. It's an interpretation. No one's got the 100%, this is what Shakespeare's work means. They have what they think it means. And they have what they suggested it should mean to you. But they can't tell you that. Only you can discover it, because the reading experience is a relationship between the book and you and your experiences. That changes, it's in flux. So the only way to reinterpret the book, to understand the book in the first place, is to read it, is to spend time with it, and then work out what you understand from it. And not only that, but understand parts about you as well. There are people that say that reading a book is a way to integrate different aspects of the world into yourself. Perhaps you'll see a different way of acting and think, I'm going to act that way myself. And I'm sure that is possible, and there are ways that occurs. But I don't believe that is the primary way that we interact with books. I believe that books are revelatory. They reveal things about ourselves. We connect with the character and we say, why did that happen? Why do I like this character? And you realise something about yourselves. You're not going to connect with a character you don't like instinctually. No matter what people say, no matter how people say, oh, you should like this character. If you don't resonate with them, on a deep level, you're not going to. You are drawn to the characters that you are drawn to because you like them, because they have a special meaning to you. So they reveal something about yourself if you have that moment of introspection to understand why. Books can't create something within you that isn't already there, that you don't have a want to do that. People who have an inclination towards Stoic philosophy will read the Stoics and think, yes, I should act more in that way. I am realizing that this is the philosophy that I held but couldn't put into words, that couldn't understand. Someone who has no interest in being a Stoic is not going to read Stoic philosophers and go, wow, I need to change my entire life. Because you can't. If your personality tends you towards extroversion and neuroticism, reading the Stoics isn't going to alter your personality. Your personality's set. Books reveal. They don't create something new within you. The final book that I reread in 2022 because I love it is The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. What spurred me on to read this book was that I recently heard the quote, "Beauty will save the world," which, for those of you who don't know, is a quote from The Idiot. And I think it's a very interesting quote. I'm not going to delve into it here, but it was one that resonated with me and made me want to reread and see the bigger picture of what Dostoevsky was intending to create with those words and with the story of the prince. Furthermore, when I was reading the major Dostoevsky works, so the Brothers Karamazov, Crime and Punishment, Demons, and The Idiot, and Notes from the Underground as well, The Idiot was one that stuck out to me the most. I find it the easiest to get into and the story that I enjoyed the most, but my memories of the story were more fingerprints in the wind, and I wanted to solidify that, to have a better understanding of the story. I also have a plan to go through the rest of Dostoevsky's bibliography and try and get an overview of what his anthology of writing lends itself towards, the themes that are most prominent, to understand Dostoevsky's philosophy and what he wants to say, as I think his books are some of the most complex and interesting that have ever been written. And it's a worthy end to read them. But The Idiot was my favourite. It was the one I started with, and you really do pick something else new every time you read one of Dostoevsky's works. Building on the theme of learning, that was another reason why I reread books in 2022. The books for that were A Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, Animal Farm by George Orwell, and Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. Of Mice and Men and Animal Farm were books that I read in school. I have reread them since, in the last couple of years, but I didn't appreciate them when I first read them back in school. It was only when I reread them, I suppose, was a bit more worldly, had a little more understanding of the goings-on in history, that I began to appreciate them much more. I began to see the lessons that they have within them. I think all four of those books are all timely and have reminded them of the pitfalls of life and what can go wrong, and given us something to be wary of and something to avoid. And I think that is equally as important as having something to work towards and a goal that we can pursue in our own life. I like to go back to books that are said to have a deeper meaning, or I've found to have a deeper meaning, to see how it shifts with my new understanding and my new experiences. Will they change? Will I lose interest? Will I find them to now lack meaning? I always find it interesting to have a measure of my own development, and these are some of the books that I use to keep up with that. The final aspect of learning is to use books to learn a new language. So the best books that I find for this are ones that you really enjoy the story, you know the story well, and in that manner you don't have to focus on the story in the book. You're just focusing on the language that is being used and trying to understand that. It also helps if you know the story very well. You'll kind of be able to work out what's saying without actually understanding the words, and that will help improve your subconscious comprehension and your subconscious learning of the language without, focused effort. So the book that I choose for that is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling. So the one that I reread this year was the one in French, but I've also used that for Spanish and, curiously, for Slovenian. But those are my choices, or that is my choice for learning a foreign language, the one that I will always start with when I am up to a comfortable list of vocabulary. I'll then try and get into reading as soon as possible, and 100% of the time it is Harry Potter books, The Philosopher's Stone, or sometimes Mr. Men and Little Miss books, because those are pretty easy to get into, particularly if it's a hard language like Slovenian or Russian. The third reason I reread books this year was because I had forgotten them, and The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien is an example of that. It's a book that I had read in the past a couple of times, but I don't have the same affinity for that a lot of people do. So I wanted to reread it, see what I was missing out on, revisit the world, and see if my opinion had changed. I do still think it's a good book, but yeah, it's not going to be one of my favourites. But I did give it another shot. Next up is Antony and Cleopatra, another Shakespeare play. Again, read it in school, forgotten the detailed plot points, had sort of a rough overview. I reread it because I also wanted to continue the character Mark Antony from Julius Caesar, and I remember that I really enjoyed Antony and Cleopatra from reading in school. Actually, one of the few books that I enjoyed from my school studies. So it's a similar story to Julius Caesar in terms of my desire to reread it, just to get a better understanding of the work. And as I said, my favourite way to do that is to reread rather than look for guides or explanatory videos on YouTube. I don't really have time for them. I much prefer to do my own reading and to go about it that way. Next up is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Read it in school, forgotten about it, wanted to reread it, particularly on the idea of ambition and the pursuit of knowledge that I know it holds. I don't know whether because I've been reading a lot about Napoleon, because of rereading Crime and Punishment a couple of years ago, that this idea of ambition and people of genius who can do whatever they want, that I wanted to see the perspective from Mary Shelley within Frankenstein. And perhaps that is what drew me to the book. Great story, certainly hit on those beats of ambition and the pursuit of knowledge. And even that will reshape the way that I go back to read Crime and Punishment, with the perspective from Frankenstein, balancing back to Crime and Punishment, and looking at other novels which deal with these themes. The more you read, the more cohesive a picture you can have, and the more connections that you can draw between different authors, depending on their time periods, depending on the approach that they had to it, how their characters reacted to ambition. I think this can also further your understanding, not just the real life experiences you have, but the literary ones, the ones that you have within books as well. Finally, Lord of the Flies by William Golding was one that I'd been planning to revisit for a while, and then I heard someone say it was a dangerous book, and well, couldn't resist now, could I? So had to read after that, and they weren't wrong. It certainly is a dangerous book in the ideas that it holds about violence and the perhaps true nature of society. Great read, very happy that I went back to it, and probably going to fall into the category of books that I love and want to get a deeper understanding of that I'll be rereading, perhaps next year, but certainly sometime in the future. The final category are books that I read for nostalgia, and that starts with The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. I don't have plans to read the whole of the Narnia series, but I stopped after reading this one, so perhaps I didn't need as much nostalgia last year as I thought I did. I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing. I suppose it's nice that suggests that I'm looking to the future, not to the past, which, good thing to keep moving forward. But obviously always important to have some time for reflection. So yeah, maybe a good year for me then. Not too much nostalgia required. Those are the books that I have reread last year, the reasons that I reread them, and the more general reasons for why I like to reread books. I'd love to know which your favourite books to reread are, why you reread them, if you have reread any of the books that I mentioned or plan to maybe now, hopefully. Maybe you like that. But aside from that, I will see you in the next one.